Hello, all you wonderful people. This is Janiyah Sampson, and we are live. Welcome to Janiyah Sampson Live. Let's get right into it, folks. Episode number 2. On today's episode, we will be discussing meditation. Meditation. There are many ways to meditate, many techniques, and many practices. There are so many to choose from, but it depends on what suits you best. There are books and other teachers who can help you explore those practices. However, today we will be discussing my personal practice, Vipassana meditation, also known as insight meditation. Insight meditation is the oldest of the Buddhist meditation practices. The practice is applied to enhance mindfulness. The method comes from the Satipatthana Sutta, the foundations of mindfulness. Within this method, you practice self-awareness by focusing on the present moment in a non-judgmental way to diminish suffering and absorb the truth of impermanence and selflessness. Mindfulness and Vipassana are pretty much alike, but not exactly the same practices. Both techniques focus on non-judgmental observation of the present moment. Things like thoughts and bodily sensations, scanning, sitting meditation, breath observation. However, mindfulness uses other tools like gratitude, mindful drinking, or eating. However, we won't be discussing any of those today. Keep in mind, I will be using words like Vipassana and mindfulness interchangeably. Do remember the practices are not the same exactly. What we're going to be focusing on is the non-judgmental observation of the bodily sensations and the thoughts while in our seated posture. That is where our focus will be today. Vipassana is a Pali language term. It refers to insight, a clear awareness of what is happening as it happens. This beautiful tradition you are going to be partaking in is a very old one, over 2,500 years old, and the result of the highly traditional cultures of South and Southeast Asia. If you enjoy rituals and ceremonies full of beauty and significance and meaning, you find no shortage in the Buddhist traditions. If you are like me, however, a little more of the pragmatic bent, dealing with things straight on, does it work, regardless of the talk, then you have also come to the right place. Millions and millions of people from all walks of life practice Vipassana and mindfulness all around the world. Big, small, Asian, Indian, Canadian, American, janitors, senators, stay-at-home moms, anyone who is alive can do the practice. You don't have to shave your head or move to a monastery. You don't have to throw away all of your worldly possessions. You don't have to denounce women or anything like that. Your philosophy in life isn't an issue here. Anyone can do insight meditation, whether you're a Christian, Muslim, or non-religious. If you believe in God or don't, there is no problem here either. I'm just a regular guy from Canada who literally is able and allowed to be certified to teach Asian ancient wisdom. And because of its overreaching application, insight meditation is for everyone and can be done by anyone. The reason for this flexibility is due to Buddhism not being a religion. It perhaps has been perceived that way. However, Buddhism has been coined more of a psychology and philosophy rather than a religion, since it never mentions gods or God, just exceptional people. The practice is the thing. Remember that, everyone. The practice is the thing. The whole purpose of the practice of Vipassana is to gain understanding of oneself and in turn others as well. Vipassana meditation is a participatory investigation where you do the investigating and the thing and the object you are investigating just so happens to be you. That's really cool, huh? Insight meditation is an investigation of reality, an examination of the very process of perception itself. It's also an effective system for exploring deeper levels of the mind. Human beings have many difficulties and unsatisfactory realities in our lives, always underlying everything we do. Usually from our interactions with our desires and our fears. We humans see life through a certain framework and like to categorize our perceived experiences. We see the world from the position of self. We see the world from the position of ego. We see the world from the position of our opinions. This is self-evident. Whatever we do experience, the information is then stored in one of three mental boxes. And depending on which mental box we categorize the information in, we respond with a set of fixed habitual mental responses. Number 1, the good box. Number 2, the bad box. Number 3, the neutral box. The good box. This is where we want to hold on to what is good and freeze time right there and not let it go. The good gets most of our attention. Sex, fun, future desires, whatever the good experience, that's where the action is. We hold the perceived good close to our hearts. And when that doesn't work, we try our best to recreate whatever the good experience was. Let's call this grasping. Box 2. Let's call this box the bad box. The information and thoughts we would rather not think about. We don't want to look at this box. It's not quite as fun and interesting to the self and the ego. So we ignore it. We push it away. We fight with our own experience. We place it compartmentally to look at it another time, when we have time. That sound familiar? I'll worry about it later. Let's call this box rejecting. Lastly, we have the neutral box, which is when we just can't even be bothered to pay attention. Here goes the experiences that are neither good nor bad. This box is too darn boring. Here we want to distract ourselves by any means necessary. With TV, drugs, pornography, we want to focus where the action is. And this boring box doesn't get its fair share of the attention it deserves. Let's call this box ignoring. For the most part, we operate on a kind of autopilot, thinking the same thoughts, paying attention to so little, chasing pleasure experiences, and running from pain. It doesn't matter how hard we chase after pleasure. There are times when you fail. It doesn't matter how much you run from pain. There are times when it catches up to you. And in between those times, you could feel so bored that you could just scream. We have built a wall around ourselves, trapped ourselves in a cell of our likes and dislikes. This kind of mental treadmill causes us to suffer. Suffering is a huge concept from the Buddhist perspective. The Pali word for suffering is dukkha. D-U-K-K-H-A. Dukkha doesn't refer to pain of the body, but it also refers to a deep, subtle dissatisfaction of the mind. The results of our desire, aversion, and rejection. The antidote to this, of course, is the practice of insight meditation. Another perspective, another way to look at the universe, where you don't try to freeze time, don't try to block out experiences, and does not ignore experiences. This level of experience allows us to go beyond the bad and the good and experience ourselves just as we are, without added judgment. We will finally give all three areas the attention they deserve. There's a great quote by Jordan Peterson, the great Canadian psychologist. He states that what you want most to be found is where you least want to look, because that's where you've kept it. To me, it means to shine a light in all the corners, the darkest corners of your heart, and see what is really happening within you, not how you would like yourself to be. When we have perceived desires, we have a physical reaction. Something perceived as bad, we have a physical reaction. And when something is categorized as boring, the neutral, we react in a specific way, depending on the box the information falls into. The problem is not the information we receive, but it's how we react to the stimulus. Okay, example time. It's a normal day at work. You remember your boss was supposed to speak with you about something. However, you are also upset about a late bill payment. Your boss calls you in to talk about your schedule as planned. You walk into the office and you start yelling at your boss. Not because of anything they have done, per se. but because of your own reaction to the information that you perceived as bad. Late bills are not good, but you made an even more unfortunate decision by reacting in the fashion you did. And now you've probably lost your job. And that is your own doing. You could have had a calm conversation and gotten somewhere with your boss. It was your choice to react the way that you did. In spite of whatever information was making itself known, you have and always have a choice. It's about how we react to the stimulus. In insight meditation, we practice paying attention to ourselves with bare witness, fully, without the reactions we normally do. This training gives us space to think, and it gives us a choice to react or not. This is also called long-term thinking, not short-term impulsive thinking. We simply just watch what comes to our mind as we sit in our meditation posture. We give the good, the bad, and the ugly all the same attention, regardless of the perception being negative, positive, sexual, dreamlike, future endeavors, things we haven't done, things we'd like to do, bills we have not paid, the rude things we said to that person at the supermarket. Don't name it or add anything to it. Just simply watch it. Don't register it as this or that. Just watch. Paying attention to the negative sensations, paying attention to the perceived negative information actually lessens its effect on us. Cool, huh? Being aware of a thought is not the same thing as thinking a thought. During your time in your seated position, meditating, you're going to quickly realize that the mind is crazy. You can't seem to get out of the flow of all of it. It pulls you this way. It pulls you that way. This is referred to as the monkey mind, due to its nature of jumping all over the place. The darn thing just won't stay still. You might think, this is awareness. It feels like I'm just practicing thinking. You need to give this some time. As your practice develops, the mind eventually calms. Just give it time. Awareness is increased by meditating more and more over time. Just like a muscle, your awareness gets stronger little bit by little bit the more that you practice. There is a difference between thinking a thought and being aware of a thought. We should understand the delicate contrast in this statement. The difference between thinking a thought and being aware of a thought, the difference is subtle. It's a matter of feeling. A thought you are aware of feels light in its presence. There is a sense of distance and room between you and the thought and the awareness of it. While we are aware of a thought, it appears and vanishes without giving rise to the next thought in the thought chain. However, regular thought is much heavier. It grabs and controls your attention. It's also quite obsessive and leads right into the next thought in the thought chain, with hardly any gap whatsoever. You can feel entangled in the thought process. Conscious thought is very avarice, greedy, right? Not for money, but greed in regards to your attention. It wants all of it, leaving nothing else to be noticed. The difference between thinking a thought and being aware of a thought is a very real thing. But again, it's very subtle and it's difficult to notice. Concentration is a tool we use to be able to see the difference. Concentration. Concentration is focused attention to achieve one pointedness of the mind. Without a fixed point, you will get lost and overwhelmed by the never ending and changing thoughts in the mind. And our choice of focused attention is the breath. The breath becomes our focus. The breath will become our anchor, if you will. This will be our point of reference for when the mind wanders. But why choose the breath, you might ask? Okay, a useful object of meditation should be cheap, portable, easily available to every human being. We bring the breath with us everywhere we go, right? It's always there, it's always available until your death. And best of all, breathing is a non-conceptual process, a thing that can be experienced without the need to think about it. Breathing is a present moment process, meaning there is no other time for it to happen. It happens here and now only. And this is a perfect anchor point to direct our focus and concentration. The first step in this process is to, of course, find the breath. Now, what you're looking for is a physical feeling of the breath or air that passes in and out of your nostrils. This is usually just inside the nostril tip of the nose or the upper lip. The spot will vary depending on the person, depending mostly on the shape of their nose. Take a deep breath, and on the inhalation, notice where the contact point is. And on the exhalation, notice if it's at the same contact point where you feel the feeling. If so, then that point is where you will follow the passage of breath, okay? Use this spot to keep your attention fixed. Without a fixed point, you will be chasing the breath, following it up and down the windpipe. This is not what you want. Also, do not try to regulate the breath. Don't increase the depth of the breath. Let it flow naturally at its own rhythm. This is easy, but it can be a little trickier than you might think. Do not be disheartened though. Once settled into your seated position, the breathing process will naturally go along on its own, and there will be no reason to manipulate it. Now that you have your fixed point and awareness of breath concluded, please close your eyes and spend a few moments just focusing on the nostril tips, breathing in and out, keeping that same point of attention on the nostril tip or the upper lip. breathing in and out, in and out. Spend a few minutes here just relaxing, focusing on the nostril tips. Now, after a few minutes, you may have figured out, just like the rest of us, that the mind is constantly wandering a lot, jumping from this to that, from this to that. You may have noticed the mind is quite a bit crazy, and you can't stay on the nostril point. You are not any worse than you were yesterday. Your mind has always been like this. Remember, the practice is called insight meditation. The practice, again, is to gain insight and awareness. And when the mind wanders, just go back to your anchor. Keeping your eyes closed, take another deep breath. Remain quiet and just be aware of all that is happening in your universe as it is now, exactly as it occurs. Keep focusing your attention on your nostril tips, your anchor point, your point of reference. Just notice the thoughts. When you are aware of a thought that comes, just see it and let it go. And go back to your anchor on the nose. When you're tangled up in a dream or a fantasy, whatever, you do the same thing. Do not react intentionally. The body will do that on its own, involuntarily. Just watch what comes up and return to your anchor. With that being said, the body may and will react to different thoughts in different ways. Thoughts produce feelings. Just take notice and get back to your anchor point on your nostrils or your upper lip. Sit, relax, enjoy, and pay attention. There is no need to force anything. We are gaining insight into how the mind and body complex really works. You now run from nothing and pay attention to all the workings of the body and mind. It's a lot easier to not want to look inside. But remember, there's a lot happening within you. Our ignorance is bliss, but it does not lead to our satisfaction. Meditation has many physical and emotional benefits, and they are as follows: gaining a new perspective on stressful situations, building the skills to manage your stress, increase self-awareness, more focus on the present moment, reducing negative reactions to negative emotions, increased concentration, increased patience and tolerance, lowering your heart rate, improved sleep quality, your resting blood pressure goes down. Folks, these are just words on paper. I ask you to come try this for yourself. It doesn't matter if it comes from some authority figure or someone speaking with confidence. This is truly an experimental practice, not a theoretical one. Remember, again, this is an experimental practice, not a theoretical one. You don't have to take my word for it. The Buddha said once to his followers after his initial enlightenment, he said, simply come and see. His words were, put no head above your own. Put no head above your own. If it works for you, you don't need words to explain why. You feel the difference between when you sat down and after you finished your practice. It's a feeling of connection with that loved one, that friend. You don't need to explain it. If it feels right, it feels right. You just know. What you are now is the result of what you were yesterday. And what you will be tomorrow is the result of what you are today. Thanks again. My name is Janai Sampson. This is Janai Sampson Live. And until next time, everyone, we're signing off. Have a wonderful day.